Hi everybody, stay thrive and welcome back to another video. Today I will be doing a review of They Were Her Property by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. I got mine as a audiobook. Well, I borrowed it from Hoopla and it's about 10 hours. So it was a pretty long audiobook. I would rate this book probably a 7 out of 10. The reason I rated it a 7 out of 10 is because it was a good book, full of good information and facts and research. Audiobooks just aren't my preference. So basically, the purpose of this book that I got is to basically challenge the minimization that historians have of white women's involvement with slavery. A lot of people seem to believe that white women didn't participate in slavery or that they were benevolent. But this book challenges those thoughts and shows the ways in which white women upheld white supremacy and utilized slavery as a way to gain independence and more financial security. The book also highlighted that the way in which slavery was taught to both white women and white men, as well as black people. This book talked about the ways in which women were taught or trained to essentially discipline. One part that really stuck out to me and a new perspective that I really learned from this book was in the chapter where they were talking about wet nurses. So if you guys see me looking down, it's just because I'm reading a quote from this chapter, chapter 5. What might enable a mother to so easily ignore or neglect to know another mother's grief or pain? 18th century British men who brought female captives from the west coast of Africa claimed that they didn't have the same emotional attachment to children that European women did. Assumptions shaped how Anglo-Americans thought about enslaved women's relationship with children in North America. It might help explain why millions of slave owners so willing to sever the parental and kinship bonds. They also described the grief, trauma, and pain as something else. So she goes on to explain white people viewed enslaved black people as cheerful beings and not distressed. So they basically rendered the pain and grief and trauma that black people experienced as invisible. When they did acknowledge it, they viewed it as pathological, whereas the emotions that white people felt were viewed as healthy. When the author said pathological, they meant if they saw a black person grieving or if a black person, displayed their emotions, they would be considered mad or vices or flaws. And those black people would be considered less valuable and desirable. So white slave traders and slave owners tried to compel the black people that they enslaved to feign or fake joy and contentment with the slave market. I thought that was very interesting, and as someone who mental health is a particular topic of interest of mine, obviously coming from a African American or black background, I'm interested in the stigmas that go along with mental health in the black community. I do know that there is a lot of minimization of pain and trauma in the black community, but I never really connected it to slavery and the way in which slave owners and society kind of dehumanize black emotions. I never really connected that to the now and how that affects how black people express their emotions. So yeah, like I said, it overall was a good book. There's another book by this author that I learned about today called Fearing the Black Body. So I'm thinking about reading that book as well, or get an audiobook of that book. But yeah, overall I would say that this is a good book, and like I said, it was pretty interesting. So let me know what stood out to you guys about the book, and stay tuned for another book review. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.